Hi, remote control fans. I don't know if anyone's watching this review or not. I don't blame you if you're not. But I thought I'd just do it because I just recently watched this movie, a movie that I knew about for over 20 years because I think in the summer of 1993, pretty much probably the same time, as Robot Wars, which I was a fan. Well, I guess I still am kind of a fan of Robot Wars. Obviously, I had been a huge fan of Robot Wars, well, maybe not huge, but a fan of Robot Wars ever since it came out in '93, and I'm pretty sure that on Robot Wars there's a trailer for this particular movie, which of course which is the second movie that was made under Charlie Band's Moonbeam label, which is like a kid's version of Full Moon for family films, which I thought was a really great idea, because after all, Charlie Band, kind of movies are not, they're lower budgets, so I thought that, it was a great idea to actually do kids movies because kids aren't going to be, they're not going to be as judgmental and stuff when they're watching a movie and be as picky about stuff as an adult watching a movie, like a horror movie or something rated R, and you just look at it and go, oh, give me a break. So I thought it was a great idea of Charlie Band's to form, the Moonbeam label, and the first movie, of course, which I've never seen, was apparently a phenomenally successful PreHysteria, which had so many things going for it the year it was released, because it was a movie about little dinosaurs, and it was released, I think, direct-to-video by Paramount, of course, home video, probably the summer of '93, which of course was the summer of Jurassic Park, so you got a huge, plus there. Not only is that only the huge plus, but that summer also, that kid who was in PreHysteria, who probably they shot it before Last Action Hero, was in one of the big high-profile kind of flop action summer movies of that year. Also, the Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, I hear tell that PreHysteria did very well for Charlie Band, and this is, like I say, getting on topic here, the second Moonbeam movie, which of course is Remote. Now, I got this particular VHS from the video store me and Matt used to work at when they closed, so it's an actual previously viewed VHS with the 4-day rental sticker still on there. So I acquired that when the store closed, or somewhere around that time. And again, I knew about this movie ever since, for how many, 22 years, ever since it came out. And I never sought it out because why would you? But when the video store was closing, I was like, well, it always looked kind of cool to a certain extent, and it's just kind of like, let's check it out, because I probably got it for dirt cheap. So Remote is a kind of ingenious ripoff of Home Alone, of course, where it's basically this kid and this girl are friends or whatever, and they got it's kind of filmed in this cool, obviously desert, California-ish desert, this cul-de-sac, where apparently, having watched the Full Moon, or the Moonbeam video zone behind the scenes, they had this cul-de-sac thing where they actually built this fake facade exterior of this house where the movie takes place at. And it's just like, holy cow, I'm surprised they did all that, they had a big enough budget to build this huge house fake facade, kind of just like the front and maybe a side or whatever, or something like that. The whole rear was, it's kind of like the Psycho house, so the whole back side of it there's nothing there. It's just, the inner workings of it. But it's just like, I'm surprised they had the budget for that, because now Full Moon barely has a budget to even go down the street and rent out a bowling alley to shoot in or whatever. So those were the days, I guess. I'm not too sure it was worth the money, but whatever. So the movie basically is about this kid, which is really kind of a cool idea, and to me, it actually kind of one-ups Home Alone in a weird way, because what kid, or male kids or whatever, boy kids, don't love remote control stuff and all this and that? And the remote control stuff in this movie is really cool because it's high-end. He's got a high-end helicopter, a high-end airplane, and this stupid, not so high-end kind of figure guy who's every time he moves, he slides down a string and grabs things and drops a tack in the guy's shoe, and he goes, and he's kind of, it looks like a puppet, you know, the face kind of reminds you of a puppet from a Puppet Master movie. And then of course you got a couple of RC cars or whatever. But what a great idea for a kid's movie, because what kid doesn't like RC, or boy doesn't like RC stuff, and especially the flying stuff, which is really cool. And like I say, it kind of one-ups Home Alone in that way. So basically this kid and his girlfriend, I mean his friend that's a girl, this kid is he's kind of photogenic, and they both kind of are, you know, and I can see this kid, you know, I don't know, he probably didn't do really much else, but this kid's kind of a photogenic kind of nerd, and his hair and his little glasses and stuff, and both him and his friend that's a girl, you know, hang out at this model house that's on this cul-de-sac, and it's kind of like their clubhouse. They go up into the top and they actually drive the RC cars. It's completely unrealistic, but it's a movie, so whatever. They drive the RC cars around in the attic and all this and that, and these three bumbling idiots, you know, very much like, you know, the burglars of Home Alone. Of course, luckily, you know, I've talked about how much in Home Alone reviews I don't like the burglar aspect, just because it's kind of sending a bad message, and it's just depressing and all that if you've been burglarized. And so this movie is like they're not burglars, these are just like criminals who they're still criminals, but whatever, that are basically escaped or whatever, and they're on the run, and they hold up in this, you know, they find this model house and they hold up in it basically. And one of the guys is a guy who the following year, 1994, will end up being in whatever, Stargate. One of these guys will end up being in Stargate. Well, good for him, or whatever it will be. And so that's pretty much it, you know. There's this one kid I thought was really underutilized. This one kid, this black friend of this kid, who, there comes the wind again, who was like, had this ridiculous, by any standards, ridiculous fashion statement, if you want to call it that, with these big overly long pants, or overly wide-legged pants and all this and that. But anyway, they introduced like this black kid, and then it's just like he has a scene with him or whatever, and he's gone, and you never see him again, which is kind of weird. But a lot of the remote control stuff, oh, it should be noted that this was directed by Ted Nicolau, which of course is a guy who I think directed all, what is it at this moment, I think 4 Subspecies movies. So he took a break from, at this point I think he had done 3 Subspecies movies. He took a break from Subspecies to go do this, and like I say, it kind of one-ups Home Alone with the RC aspect. Is very cool, and they pull off some relatively cool things. And in closing, one thing that I will say about this movie that I liked from the previews, and liked, you know, having watched it, is so many full moon movies, especially now, but even back in the day, were so many of them were like, I don't know, indoors in sets and these interiors and all this. And I'm really kind of like, especially if you're making movies in California, I really like the outdoors and just like sunny blue sky and just whatever desert terrain and stuff like that. And this movie has got a lot of exteriors, and like I say, shooting on the cul-de-sac and all kinds of, at the end when he gets all 3 of the bad guys, and one guy ends up with a foot on each, one foot on like a couple of remote control cars, and like they're, you know, roller skates, and the kid, you know, sends this guy speeding down the hill or whatever. It's so funny because you can see the cars deteriorate under his feet, like the tire falls off and it's just turning into a piece of shit. Like it's just not, you know, not doing well under the pressure of his feet or whatever. But there's some, you know, even if you're an adult who's into RC helicopters and planes, there's some pretty cool, you know, they get a pretty good helicopter, you know, RC helicopter and plane pilot to do some relatively, you know, cool stuff. To say, you know, it's a Charlie Band production, so it's not a huge epic, but there's really nothing else going for it other than just like the cool desert scenery and the relatively photogenic, you know, kid who was, you know, kind of like a lesser Macaulay Culkin kind of. I mean, the kid's not annoying like Macaulay Culkin was. You know, the kid's just kind of. That's something I like about it too, where he's not all annoying. He's just like kind of nerd and whatever. But like I say, one final time, the RC aspect, they pull off some, you know, relatively cool, you know, bits with the RC stuff for relatively low budget. So I'm gonna go. It's, you know, for all my praise, I'm afraid it's a kids movie, and it's kind of, you know, the bad guys are kind of annoying to watch, and there's this stupid running gag they do throughout the whole movie when the bad guys get into the model home. This one guy's like Yeah, I know where I can sense where like the motion sensors are, or the pressure sensors are for the alarm, which I don't think there probably even is an alarm in the house. I don't know if that's the whole joke, is that they think there is and there really isn't, but they never really say whether there is or not. But I'm assuming that, so this one, the head of the bad guy, like, puts all these cigarette packs where he thinks these pressure sensor, or where he thinks he can step without, you know, sounding the alarm off, and it's just kind of like, it kind of gets a little, it kind of wears out after a while, because the whole movie, whenever they're inside the house, they're stepping on these things and making sure to avoid wherever they think the pressure points are for the alarm, and it's kind of like, yeah, you know, you've done that joke, that's funny, give me a break. So, you know, let's face it, even with all my praise and stuff, I don't really think the movie's worth much. So the star rating on it will be, I suppose we can go 1.5 stars for Remote. After all my praise, it's just like, that's alright. I mean, I'm just I do think that just because there's really good things about it doesn't mean the overall experience isn't, you know, enjoyable or satisfying. But if you're a kid, you know, like a kid or whatever, of the, you know, a month old or something, you'll love it. If your standards aren't very high, you'll love it. But I've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, so my standards are a little higher. But there you go, a comedy for the whole family, Remote. And I guess it didn't do well enough for a part 2 like PreHysteria. I do think ended up with a part 2, but Remote, I don't believe ended up with a part 2. But the two kids, you know, the girl and the kid, are relatively likable. Like I say, we introduce a black kid and he's just gone after that, and there's this one bully kid who like wrecks one of his planes, the Zero, you know, fighter plane from World War II or whatever, and you just want to, I don't know, you just want to beat the shit out of that kid. So there you are, 1.5 stars for Remote. You know, a movie that took me like 22 years to see, but better late than never. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.